Hey everyone, me Kevin here. We've got our Diamond Hands coffee, we got our rocket ship to the moon, and we are super lucky today because we've got Omar Kazi, an Autopilot, I would say, expert by now with amazing coverage on FSD, covers everything Tesla related, and oh my gosh, welcome. I am so excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey man, great to be on.
Totally. So I just want to dive right in, man. Tesla's full self-driving autopilot. Yesterday, Kathy Wood and her team at ARK Invest released that they think by 2025, there's a 50% chance Tesla's robo-taxi network could not just be live, but literally be fully autonomous, no humans, and generate like over $340 billion in revenue for Tesla. Is she cuckoo or is she even remotely possibly right on this one?
Well, I think she's right. And using the FSD beta for around 5 months now, I definitely feel what she's saying, that her conviction is stronger. When I got my car, 2018 Model 3, all it could do was really stay in one lane. It couldn't even change lanes automatically. And it hasn't even been 3 years since I got the car. Now it can do everything. So just the rate of improvement from driving in one lane to now making turns, going around pedestrians, doing all kinds of crazy stuff is insane. Now, at the same time, people need to understand that this is not going to happen overnight. This is really one of the most challenging software problems ever. And it's not just going to be like you get this next update and your car is autonomous. It's going to happen slowly, step by step, all over the world. And the first step with this full self-driving update is really just a driver assistance system, similar to what you use with Autopilot on the highways, where, with Navigate on Autopilot, you can drive for maybe hundreds of miles and the car can do everything, changing lanes, going around cars, all that. But you still need to watch, you need to pay attention because there's all kinds of crazy things that can happen in the real world that you need to pay attention to. So that's the first step for Tesla's full self-driving software. They're launching it as a driver assistance system. It won't do everything, but it's amazing what it's capable of, and really makes you understand why Kathy Wood's so bullish.
Now, over the last 5 months, have you you started with full self-driving 5 months ago? You've had your Tesla for a few years. Have you noticed a dramatic ramp in improvement over just the last 5 months? Like, are the beta testers actually helping this get better?
Oh yeah, 100%, no doubt. I mean, when we got the first beta, it wasn't even that good at just staying centered in the lane. Like, the thing about this software is it adds a lot more capability. So before, the previous version of Autopilot, it was just like, okay, stay centered in your lane. That was kind of just, okay, here's the lane lines, stay in the middle.
Don't hit the guy in front of you.
Exactly, yeah. So with this new version of Autopilot, they broke those golden rules of Autopilot that you've got to stay in the center of the lane. And now the thing can drive on the other side of the road if it needs to. It can drive, into kind of going around in between lanes if it needs to go around somebody. It's a complete rewrite of the software and is a lot more advanced in that it can drive like a real person. Sometimes a real person will go onto the other side of the road for a second to go around a stopped car or something like that. So it's a lot more capable, but then the flip side of that is it can just be a lot more strange. So definitely in terms of the first beta to now, huge improvement in terms of stability, in terms of feel. And now it's really gotten to a point where you can really enjoy using it. Before it was like you really had to be on high alert. Now it's getting more to like normal Autopilot where you can just kind of relax and let it do its thing more.
How many interventions are you doing on average here when you go drive wherever it is you drive during this pandemic?
Yeah, so there are sometimes, if you get lucky, you can have a drive that has no interventions at all. Like, for example, there's some common routes I do, like, just going to certain friends' house or something where it consistently can just get there by itself with minimal action from me. I even, one time drove from Los Angeles to San Francisco, basically with no interventions. And that was mostly, the highway driving. But people should expect to have a lot of interventions, right? So it's the whole kind of discussion about interventions as kind of, you're not sitting in the car going like, okay, I hope I don't have to do anything. You're really
Right.
collaborating with the car, right? So
Mhm.
you might be driving and it's going ahead and stops behind a car that is like a UPS truck that's pulled over, and maybe you'll just take over and go around it and then put it
Right.
back on. So it's really a collaborative thing where the software is driving and you're tweaking the settings. You're kind of being the pilot, giving it the training data it needs to one day be able to do it completely without intervention in the next couple of years.
Is it that every time you intervene and sort of break autopilot when you rotate that wheel enough, is it learning from those takeovers?
Yeah, 100%. So this is really the key to making the software get better. A lot of people would say, well, why are you launching this as a driver assistance system? Isn't it dangerous to launch a system
Right.
where you have to take over sometimes? And
Yeah.
that is actually the key to getting it highly reliable, is gathering all this data about how it actually works in the real world, in the rain, in the sun, in the winter, in the summer, when the sun's blinding you, all these different conditions. So, I'll give you an example. Just someone cutting into your lane. How does it detect when someone's about to cut into your lane? It needs to start slowing before they even get into the lane. So it's
Right.
actually kind of right, exactly. So it's kind of hard to actually tell the difference between, like, is someone going to cut into your lane, or are they just kind of hanging to the side of the lane? So what the system will do is, let's say it predicts someone's going to cut into your lane, but then they don't actually end up cutting into your lane. So the system will
Mm.
then give that feedback up. It'll upload that data and it'll say, hey, here's where the prediction that you made actually differed from reality. So I'm going to upload this and fine tune the prediction. And similarly, if someone cut into the lane, but the system didn't predict it ahead of time, it'll upload that and say, here's an example of a time when someone cut in and you didn't detect it. And that'll be used to make the cut-in detection better in the future.
Got it. So really, just the more people out here that are testing this, really, the better and more competitive Tesla gets. Why don't they just give everybody the FSD then? I mean, I think now they've got maybe 2,000 people using it. It's pretty
Yeah.
rare. What are I mean, I know they're talking about the button coming out next month. Maybe you could talk about
Right.
that.
Yeah. So there's definitely been a lot of anticipation. A lot of Tesla drivers, not all of them, but the hardcore ones who really want to be on the
Yeah.
cutting edge. They're like, why can't I run this on my car? I really want to run this. This is super cool. And they're not allowed to, really. It's still in this kind of closed beta where only a couple thousand people have access to it. And definitely as more people get on, the amount of data coming in and the rate of improvement is just going to accelerate. But it's still in this place right now where it can do crazy things. Like, it's just great a lot of the time. But at the same time, like, for example, the other night I was using it and it was going along fine, and it just kind of randomly decided it wanted to make a left turn. And I said, well, this is not the place to make a left turn. So I turned it off. I drove straight and I turned it back on. So you really need to be, hyper aware of it. There's still a few kinks to work out. It's getting close. But this is definitely something where you want some really careful testers. And there's a lot of people who really are going to want to, short sellers and people like that, who are going to want to spin this as dangerous, who are competitors to Tesla, who are going to want to derail it and say this shouldn't happen. So they're really being careful, prioritizing safety above everything. They are going to, do this button where pretty much anyone can sign up for the beta. It's still a beta, and you have to be careful testing it, but they'll open it up to more people. And that should be happening maybe, as soon as April.
Yeah. Now, why was it making this left turn? I mean, that's kind of weird. Is it just like, I'm done, a Family Guy, I'm going over here. Yeah. What's going on?
I mean, pretty much, Kevin, you'll realize, like, the thing
What?
that the thing you'll realize when you drive it is there are just so many things that the system can differ from what you would do driving, right?
Yeah.
And everybody has their own kind of driving style, but there's so many things that it can do. It's not just like safety related things like, oh, it tried to hit a wall or something. It's, oh, it's going too slow. Like, you're at a 4-way stop sign and everyone's just getting annoyed at you because the car is like waiting and waiting for all these pedestrians to cross. And people are like honking at you, like, go, what are you doing? And the system's just being super, super cautious. It can annoy you going too slow or something. It can annoy other people. Then there's, obviously like staying in the, following the road rules and all of that. So this is really just an incredibly complex problem. And it's going to take a number of years really to get it perfected. But, if you've used normal autopilot, it's the same thing. Everybody who uses autopilot knows a lot of the times it works really well. And over time, it's just started working better and better. But at the same time, there are times where something strange happens on the road. I mean, the real world is unpredictable and you just have to take over. So it's going to be like that for a while. But based on the rate of improvement, there's just going to be less and less and less interventions until there's one day no interventions. And you're like, wow, I've been using this and it's just been working perfectly. And then the restrictions go and one day you'll be able to just take a nap.
I mean, yeah, no kidding. That'll be awesome. I want to ask you, I'm going to pull up just a quick little example here. Give me 1 sec. Let's go ahead and jump on to, let's see, if I just do this. Okay, and then hit here. So here, this is Google Street View. It's a very wide angle here. But the point is, this particular area here, which if I just zoom out for a moment here, it's a bend. It's a sharp kind of turn here. What I notice is, and I've driven this particular road, anytime I'm on the road, I almost drive this road here. And what I've noticed is full self-driving, you're going usually around 50 miles an hour here. And I turn on, maybe not full self-driving, but what I have,
right,
where I turn on autopilot. For some reason, it goes into this turn, which should be like a 30-mile-an-hour turn, at 50, regularly crosses this railroad and regularly flies off, the white lane over here, tries to overcorrect. And it's been years, man, of the same thing.
Yeah,
and
man.
You've got poles here, and it's like, please take over ASAP, freaking out at me every time. Like, what? Like, come on, Tesla. Like, this is not good. Like, when is that going to get fixed?
Yeah, man, I totally feel you. And everybody has these situations. I had these situations with autopilot where there's certain areas where it just doesn't work, right? And that's the limitations. It just doesn't work. And that's the limitation of, where the software is today and what we've been using. But this is the golden update we've been waiting for, okay? Like, they have really packed in so much functionality. And, typically a lot of people who maybe don't use autopilot might be alarmed, like, oh my God, like it doesn't work here. But as autopilot users, we learn to work around these limitations. So when you have these areas, you'll just disengage ahead of time and kind of work around it and be aware of these kinds of issues it has. But this is like a complete rewrite of autopilot. So I hear people saying a lot like, oh, I've got this complaint about autopilot that I've got today. And it's hard for me because it's like, look, this next update, this is the update you've been waiting for. They packed so many new features and so many new things into this update. It's a completely new system.
Is this like 9 or that you're talking about, or what? Autopilot update 9?
This is the FSD beta 8.3 is what they're calling it, or 8.2 right now. So, for example, it's now really good at slowing down for turns. So you can set it up to like 60 and it'll be able to see the curve and see how fast it can take the curve and slow down automatically. Even if you tick the speed up to 90 miles an hour, it's not going to go faster than what's safe.
Wait. So what you're saying is that's not in the software right now, and it's actually like that scenario is planned for a release in this next update.
Yeah, Kevin. So they've been working on this secretly behind the scenes for years, and it is just a completely new version. And I feel pretty confident that you will try it and it'll be able to do that area that you've been having trouble with for so long. And it'll probably be able to do it really well. This is just a much more advanced version of the software. The old version used one camera, the front camera. It's now using all cameras at the same time, all 8 cameras around the car. and just doing a lot of functionality. If there's like a guy in the middle of the street just standing there, it'll be able to go around him. If there's, a stopped car, it'll be able to go around it. If it's a fast curve, it'll be able to slow down automatically and take that curve. And I think people are really going to be just impressed with what it can do. There have been so many times when my jaw is on the floor. Granted, there's like some rough edges, but the capabilities of this are huge. And by the time it goes out to the public, people are just going to be floored at their same old car they've been using for years, doing things that they never thought it could do.
It's every time I get I don't have the beta, but every time I get an update, like yesterday, I got an update, the little notification, and it's like, oh, you can now visualize traffic lights and stop at traffic lights. And so I have Autopilot on the streets. And this thing is showing these little icons of all the traffic lights, like, oh, this one's green, this one's yellow, this one's red, and oh, we'll stop at the red one. Like, oh, cool. Like, it's just these incremental improvements. And I'll tell you, I got my Tesla Model X in 2017. When I first got the self-driving, I was lucky if it would even stay in the freaking lane,
Right, yeah.
Like, it's come so freaking far already. But I have to say, with these, like, this turn that I showed you here, I'm going to say it. If it had LiDAR, it would realize there are freaking telephone poles right next to that road. Like, don't go so fast there. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a lot of kind of performance improvements you can get from mapping things out, using LiDAR, and this can give you some really fast demos. But what Tesla's really doing here is incredible. They're essentially saying, okay, let me take an image, same that you can get from any old camera phone, and just be able to drive the car anywhere based on this image. And we've seen a lot of incremental improvements. I was kind of basing the rate of improvement off that incremental improvement. So they launched traffic lights, and I assumed like, okay, they're going to do traffic lights, they're going to do turns. They're kind of just going to do it incrementally the way they've been doing it, and eventually it'll have all the features. No. While they've been releasing these incremental features, they've got this secret thing in the lab that is just a complete next generation software. They've been working on this for years, literally. And it is just dramatically better. And I think when people try it, they will realize that LiDAR is not needed, that cameras alone and radars and sonar can actually do the job in a really impressive way. And I actually went down to Chandler, Arizona, where there's Waymo, like an actual driverless car where you can sit in the back seat and you can use this self-driving car, and it's got LiDAR and all that stuff on it. LiDAR's all around the car. And even in that area, Waymo's not perfect. So there's a lot of areas they won't let you go. You can't get dropped off everywhere. Sometimes you tell them to drop you off here, and it'll actually drop you off across the street. So the idea that, LiDAR is a silver bullet and it fixes everything, no, like there's still problems. Self-driving is still hard, whether you've got LiDAR or not. But what's really amazing about the Tesla thing is you can really download it onto any old car. I have my 2018 Model 3. It works just as well on a 2018 as a 2021. And that's what's really powerful. I think the scale of the data and really having people using it and testing it all over the world is going to be a lot more important than LiDAR or what kind of sensors you're using.
So, you've got every competitor like Neo and Lucid, they're all using LiDAR. Why not just have forward LiDAR, use like the microvision, slap in the rear view mirror, do what Lucid's doing, put it in the front bumper, right under the hood so you don't even see it. And it's just a little device that's just looking forward. Why not get that extra data? I agree with you. Like mapping everything out, not necessary. But just for the sake of, we don't want to crash into stuff that's in front of us. Wouldn't that extra thing just maybe help the car go from maybe like this, here's a Twitter comment, this 98% perfection to maybe 99.9?
Right. Yeah, this is a sentiment that you hear a lot, and it does seem like logically like, oh, well, more sensors should help. But the reality is that without a breakthrough vision system, without a vision system that can really drive the whole car from the camera, you can't solve self-driving. So the LiDAR might be able to give you a quick demo, but you really need a vision system to be able to solve the entire problem, to be able to look at somebody on the sidewalk and they're on their phone, they're distracted. Are they going to walk into the road? Are they going to stay on the sidewalk? All these really long tail reliability events, you need vision to do it. And LiDAR alone is not enough to do it. So even if you have LiDAR, you still need to make the vision system with the cameras good enough to really drive the car on its own. And the other really powerful thing here is, a lot of people are dying every day. A lot of people are going to die today. A lot of people are going to be injured in a way that is going to affect the rest of their life today. And the most important thing, I think, is getting this technology onto cars, helping people, right? Like, you can have a Waymo in Chandler, Arizona, but it's not going to help anybody because nobody can use it. It's this $400,000 car. And even if you are in that service area, you're not going to replace your car. So this is really about getting something that can run on everyone's car, that can run on your Tesla you have, that has the potential, really. I mean, they could put this in a Mercedes, and they plan to actually license it to other car makers. You can really put this in any car because it's simple. You just put cameras around the car. Most cars already have that, and radar and sonar, and a computer, which is really around $500. It's kind of a lightweight iPad type computer.
Wow.
And you can drive the car with that. So that's what's really important, is this technology. If you can really get it to work with the cameras, you can put it in any car, and that is what's really powerful.
What's stopping Volkswagen from just putting some sort of self-driving into all their cars and ultimately getting more mileage than Tesla, because they just have the numbers right now?
Yeah, so Volkswagen is trying hard to do this, right? So it's a huge race, and nobody wants to let Tesla do it. But the key is really the data. To be able to demonstrate the software works, you need to put it through all kinds of scenarios and show that it works. And we look at like Facebook. Why does Facebook have the best facial recognition in the world, where they can, in some cases, pick out faces in a picture better than a human can when you put a human to the same test? It's because everyone was tagging their friends for years, right? Here's Kevin, here's Kevin, here's Kevin, and giving Facebook that labeled data set. And Facebook was able to use this to build this AI that can predict who is in different photos. So really, the data is really key here. Just having the biggest set of data. And although Volkswagen has a lot of cars, they're not interconnected in the way Tesla is, where it's just software from top to bottom. And a Tesla is really kind of made out of software, even from controlling the engines to the battery to all these things. It's all software. It's all integrated together in a central computer. And Tesla's a few years away here. And I definitely think their software expertise is going to make a big difference. They're the only company that can do this by themselves. Everybody else has to partner, right? So, okay, maybe you've got a company that's good at software, Waymo or Google, and they have to partner with Chrysler or somebody else to get the car because nobody else does the whole thing. Tesla does the whole thing. They can make the car, the motor, work great with the software, all designed for autonomy from the top to bottom. So definitely, I think that vertical integration is really what sets Tesla apart.
Nice. And I mean, what do you think about then Lucid and Neo? Do these guys have a chance? Is it worth them trying?
Well, Lucid, I think, has a beautiful looking car. Their challenge right now is really just getting it to market. It's really hard to get a product like this to market, to sell your first cars and to sell it to someone who is going to be okay with getting it serviced, or their locations, or their charging locations. That, I'll be impressed if they're able to have a successful product launch. I will applaud for them on that. In terms of their self-driving, I mean, this is really, really hard. Like, this is a really, really hard problem. And when people try it, they will realize just how difficult it is to actually drive the car in a way that you would. Everyone's going to be trying to do it. Elon said once, in 10 years, self-driving is going to be easy. Everybody's going to
Wow.
have self-driving in 2030. But in this decade, from 2020 to 2030, there are going to be huge differences between what different systems can do. And I think right now people really choose a car based on, what it looks like, based on the hardware specs. In the future, I think people are really going to choose a car based off the software, not the hardware.
Wow.
And that's going to be a big difference, kind of like with smartphones today.
So kind of like you go to that white sticker at the dealership lot, if dealerships still exist, and it's like, this has this version. It's the NVIDIA system, which is better than the
Yeah.
Mobileye, or then
Oh,
Qualcomm's like,
yeah.
no, we use the Qualcomm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that's what it's going to be. And you've already started to see this happen with, some cars have Android Auto and stuff. The software has become a lot more of a differentiating factor, as much as, say, the hardware, the acceleration, the range, that kind of stuff. I mean, if your car is driving itself, acceleration, range, these kinds of things, they're not really an issue, because the car is going to go charge when you're done with it by itself. It's not really going to, be like you're flooring it all the time. So these things will become less important over time, and people are really going to care about the software, and they're going to really kind of, I think, stick to the software that works for them, similar to how people are either kind of like in the iPhone or Android camp today.
Yeah. So there'll be competitors, and I guess that'll be a good thing. Have you gone deep on like the Qualcomm, NVIDIA, Mobileye, any of these, any of your favorites over there, and how do they even stack up?
Yeah, I like Mobileye. Mobileye, of course, they were the people who actually made the original Autopilot in
For
Tesla
Tesla.
cars before 2017. So people have always said, Mobileye is great. And what really sets Mobileye apart is they're partnered with like every manufacturer, right? So you can get a Mobileye
Right.
system in Mercedes, you can get it in BMW, and they're really great. Intel actually bought them, so I think Mobileye is definitely one of the companies to watch. But they currently have not deployed anything as advanced as what you're seeing with FSD on city streets.
Hmm. So even like a Neo, for example, maybe they can do the take over a lane on the highway. They could stay in the lane, but this is really like 2019 tech for Tesla.
Yeah, definitely. And you're going to see a lot of people have features like this on the highway where you can change lanes and stuff.
Yeah.
That's no surprise. People are going to, catch up in a few years. The city streets thing is like a new order of magnitude. You got people walking around, you got cars. There is so much crazy stuff happening on the city streets compared to the highway. You really need, a next level of machine learning and neural networks and all this stuff to even have a chance. So it's going to be an interesting battle to watch. There's going to be a lot of players for sure. But I really like what Tesla is doing with letting real people use this technology. Even though it's not perfect, it's not ready to be autonomous, letting people say, okay, this is actually good enough that it is actually really convenient. It's actually really safe. Like when I'm driving my Tesla, I'm driving like an asshole. I'm speeding. I'm like going around people. I'm accelerating. And when I put it into FSD, I'm just chilling. I'm listening to music. The car's going around the speed limit. Someone cuts me off. It's not getting mad. It's like, whatever. It doesn't care. It's a robot. So I think this has huge safety benefits today.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. Like, I feel like when I have autopilot on the highway, I don't really even, I mean, okay, I don't want to say I don't pay attention, but like, I don't care about, like what that car's doing. Oh, I want to pass that guy. I want to go a little faster. Like I put it in the left lane. I set it to 79 and I don't have to do anything more. I don't have to worry about anything. Like if there's traffic, if it's a little slower, if it's not the fastest, whatever, because I've just like totally almost zoned out of the thing because it's just so easy. So in some sense, I almost feel like that's way safer than trying to zip around and just be a little bit faster,
Yeah, totally. So instead of really, there's a lot of decisions you're making while driving. You're thinking about like, okay, where's the exit? When do I have to get over? You're kind of like getting annoyed with people in a different way. Like if someone cuts you off, you might be like kind of annoyed, like, oh, I want to go around them. Like I want to like chase them a little bit, maybe. Like this is like the weird human psychology. But then when autopilot's doing it, what the human really has to do is it's a much lower level driving task. All you're really doing is just making sure it doesn't hit anything really, right? You're just
Yeah.
providing that upper kind of bound of safety. But the car is making the decisions about when to change lanes, when to go around slow cars, when to take the exit, when to make, right and left turns. So it's a lot less mental load. And you can really think about, what your next YouTube video is going to be or something like that. And kind of
Yeah,
just
exactly.
subconsciously, you're processing, okay, the
Or
car's,
film it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's definitely a lot less mental load. And even in a state where it's not autonomous, it has huge benefits. And for the last 5 months, and let me tell you, the version I use, the first version, is going to be a lot shittier than what people actually get when it launches. But at the same time, it's still really nice to use, even in an imperfect state. And I think people are really going to enjoy using it, even in this time where it improves the reliability until it's, near autonomous.
So I guess it drives me nuts a little bit that as a startup, they're used to having lost lots of money. They just went profitable last year. Why not just throw the little LiDAR sensor in the front? Like, oh, we'll just do it for like the 2017 to the 23 models, and then we'll go full vision. Like, why not just like take that extra and like use it to help train the cameras? Like, what's this like? Is this Elon being stubborn, or does he really believe it?
I think that he really figured something out, just groundbreaking. And I think that people are really going to look back at this and study this as a business school case study of like, wow, someone really figured something out just profound, which is that the LiDAR cannot solve the problem. I think people are a little confused about what the problem is.
Yeah.
So the problem of like autonomy is really like, no matter what happens, and all kinds of crazy shit can happen on the road, no matter what happens, it's going to solve it. So the issues you see in the road aren't really like, okay, the car didn't see that. That is not what I'm seeing. Like, this car's over there and the car didn't see it. And if it had LiDAR, it would have seen it and it would have been okay. No, that's not what the issue is. It can actually see everything fine with the cameras. But what the issue is really like, okay, for example, there's an intersection and there's a median and someone is standing in the median, right? Like a pedestrian. So is that person going to stand there, or are they about to cross? And even, there are people last night crossing the road illegally, and it was like 1 a.m. and there were these two kids just walking across the street, and the car was just going pretty fast. And I didn't even see the kids, but the car did. And it started slowing down. So it's really like really understanding the stuff on the road, understanding what it's going to do, coming up with a plan. And you can actually do this better if you have more data. So having data from 1 million cars, the camera data, and using that to make decisions, it has a lot more potential than with LiDAR, where if you had a LiDAR car, you would really only have Waymo like 600 cars. Tesla has 1.2 million cars. So this is like a whole different order of scale. And I think when people try the software, they'll agree. And in time, people will look back and say, this whole thing about needing to use lasers, it was just wrong. And using computer vision, using cameras, it seems crazy, but that is actually the way that I think you can get to really, really high levels of reliability.
Wow. Yeah. I guess the only thing, it totally makes sense what you're saying. It's it's scary when nobody else is doing it the Elon way, right? Because it's like, if he's wrong, you might take a big step back. But let's hope he's right in that case. What do you think about like visibility issues when you've been using this full self-driving? What happens when you're in, and I don't know when you are, but like deep fog, nighttime, some of these edge case scenarios of weather?
Yeah, so it works in the fog. It works when you're driving directly into the sun. So for example, this is like a big concern. The current version of Autopilot is not as good at this. And a lot of people are saying, okay, well, when you drive into the sun, is that okay? Well, it's actually able to use all the cameras around the car. So even if the front is blocked, it can use the side cameras. It can use the rear camera. And and it can still kind of figure it out, and you can still stop for traffic lights and all that. In rain, it actually works better. There's a lot of situations where navigate on autopilot would turn off and it would just go back to basic autopilot, where FSD is able to continue running even in heavy rain. So I think people are really going to be impressed with how well it works in all kinds of conditions, and the number of conditions is only going to expand. And they can always make the hardware better. They can always say, okay, we're going to put some better cameras, better stuff. People don't realize that most of the cameras are actually inside the glass. So the 3 cameras that are facing front, they're behind the windshield. And the left and right cameras, which are used to make left and right turns, they're also behind the glass. If you look on the side of your car, there's kind of like a glass pane and they're behind the camera. So if you are behind the glass and you can see, then a camera behind the glass should logically be able to see too. It seems super counterintuitive. But once you try it, you'll be like, hey, it's actually raining and it works pretty well. Now, granted, some people have tried it in snow and stuff, and they said, okay, well, it definitely got worse in the snow. And it's kind of funny. They said, well, when the snow was pure white, that's when it was really like confused. But when the snow got dirtier, it actually worked better. So this is kind of just like beta stuff. There's like a lot of improvements to be had there. So if the weather is worse, generally it's not going to do as good as a sunny day, but they're going to keep training it, improving it, making it better and better in all kinds of conditions. And I think people will be pretty impressed. And the other thing I'll say about this is like, hey, if they can make it just work on a sunny day and it can drive itself on a sunny day, that is an achievement in itself. Like, sure. Okay, yeah, there's rain and snow and all that, but even if they can just make it work on a sunny day, and I can really like take my hands off the wheel, like use my phone or whatever someday, I'll just be impressed based off that.
Wow. The thing about going from where we are now to go into robotaxi is at some point Tesla's going to have to be able to make that jump to basically, hey, this is good with human intervention, to it's perfect, we don't need the human anymore. That seems like an insane leap, because in most cases, certainly now, we're still taking over. I mean, 4 years could go fast. I mean, I've had my Tesla now for almost 4 years, 3.5. Do you actually think we're going to go to a point where at some point it would have to be earlier than 3.5 years? I mean, really, we'd have to be in 3 years. We'd have to be able to flick a switch and go, that's it. We don't need the human anymore. That just seems crazy. Like, I get the convenience of it. Like, I got full self-driving, but I'm here to take over. I mean, that's making the jump to basically we just don't even need someone in the driver's seat anymore.
Yeah, so I do think it's going to happen. And I do think it's going to happen even with, potentially a 2017 car will be able to do this. And this is really just like, people do not believe it. You could tell them that, the tooth fairy showed up at your house, and they would be more likely to believe it than believe that this is really going to happen. And, it's not going to happen all at once. But the reason I believe it is that, I've seen it do drives where it just does the whole drive itself, even today, even in this super early stage where they're not even comfortable releasing it to everyone. There are times where, and you saw some of these videos I've posted where it's just doing insane things where you're like, holy shit, like I'd have never expected the car could be able to do this. Just these super complex situations where pedestrians are walking all over the street, people are parking, like crazy, crazy stuff. And it's able to handle some of these situations. Now, granted, like maybe, 50% of the time or more, there's going to be some takeover on the drive today. So, and that's like, it's not really a big deal. It's like, okay, I took over for a second, I put it back on a second later. But I think it's just going to keep getting more and more reliable over time. And there's some low hanging fruit. There's some easy stuff. So right now they just dug this boring tunnel in Las Vegas, right? So they dug a tunnel from like the convention center to, somewhere else. And they're really going to dig this whole tunnel network under Las Vegas, Elon Musk's Boring Company, which I think is just going to be like insane. Literally, like under all the casinos, there's going to be these tunnels, and you can just go under, like, say, Caesar's Palace and just shoot to the other side of the strip in this tunnel, like 120 miles an hour. which is just going to be like insane when you're just drunk in Vegas, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that. But the thing about this is like a tunnel's easy, right? So there's no pedestrians in a tunnel. There's no traffic lights. There's really nothing to worry about. And what you're going to see, I think this year, maybe next year, is that in the tunnel, and anyone will be able to go into Vegas and try this, there will be no driver. So you can get, maybe 5 of us in a Tesla in Vegas going through this tunnel completely driverless. And, people can be drunk, whatever, and it's going to work. So I think that's how they're going to start. They're going to start with, okay, in this tunnel, we can make it autonomous. And then it's going to be, okay, on the highway, I think that's kind of another kind of lower hanging fruit. The highway is simpler. Okay, on the highway now, maybe you can take your hands off the wheel. Maybe you can, use your phone for a little bit, and the car will alert you if you need to take over, maybe. But in certain areas, it'll start to be able to do that on the tunnels or the highway or whatever. And then I think it'll be certain cities like, okay, we've really, really tested it well in downtown Las Vegas on the Las Vegas Strip. We're now going to enable it to be autonomous in that area. It's super, super well tested. We've seen people using Autopilot, and all year there hasn't been, one disengagement, right? Like thousands of people have been using it in Las Vegas, and there hasn't been one intervention related to safety all year. And we have that data being uploaded to our system. Okay, well, now that we have the data that it's working, we don't need to have the human. So I think it's going to happen slowly. It's going to take a number of years. I think there's going to be highs and lows. So I think people are going to get the software. They're going to be super excited. There's going to be like this honeymoon phase, like, oh my God, this is amazing. My car's doing that. And then I think, maybe people become a little disappointed. They'll be like, well, it's doing all this stuff, but it's still not autonomous. Right. But then over time, over a number of years, like, I really do think that that they're going to achieve this. And there's some people who say, no, it's impossible. They're never going to do it. Well, to them, I say, let's see how far we can go. Let's see what the limits are. Like, how good can we really make it before we run into this limit? And personally, I don't think there is a limit. I think that it is possible to make this software with the hardware on Teslas today safer and better than a human in every way. Less accidents, less deaths, and it's going to be able to do like race car maneuvers like you can't even imagine. Like, it'll just be able to drive like a professional stunt driver. It's going to get that good. And when you look at just the rate of improvement over the last 3 years, where I got my car and it's just doing lane keeping and now it's doing everything, I just extrapolate that out another 3 years. And I don't know if I can promise like, oh, it's going to be autonomous in 3 years, but I think it's going to look good in 3 years. I think. I
mean, something you just mentioned, I think, was very interesting too, is that in theory, they don't just have to say, okay, we're good to do full self-driving everywhere. They could just say, let's flick on the Vegas switch. That's it. We've got enough data for this area. Okay, we now don't need a human over here anymore. Okay, LA, you guys are on now. Oh, Idaho, nope, not yet. Still need some more data. Let us know when you buy enough Teslas and give us more mileage.
Right. Yeah. And, this is what some people have started doing. Like, for example, Waymo works in Chandler, Arizona. So why only Chandler, Arizona? Why only this small area? Well, the car doesn't work in Los Angeles and San Francisco and that kind of stuff as well. So they've kind of worked around the limitations by saying like, okay, we're only going to do it in this small area, and we're going to just map the hell out of this area. Like, every inch of the city is just pre-mapped with LiDAR. Tesla isn't doing that. Their system just looks at any road for the first time and just drives it. So I think this is definitely like a way to launch, is just to say like, okay, well, we've shown that it works really well in this area, either, on the highway or in a tunnel or in this downtown area. And we're going to start to be able to offer it in these specific settings. And then before long, I think it'll just work everywhere. Like, you will literally be able to say, okay, I'm in Los Angeles. Autopilot, take me to New York. And it will literally take you from Los Angeles to New York. And, even this year, you will barely have to do anything. It'll take all the exits and everything. And as you cross state lines and the road markings change, it'll know how to drive in each state. It'll know how to drive in Manhattan. It'll know how to drive in Los Angeles. It'll know how to drive in San Francisco, even if you're not a native. I mean, like San Francisco is like kind of a crazy place to drive, and the car
Yeah,
will
it
just be
is.
able to drive in all these places, anywhere. And you can already start to see that today.
That's incredible. How many miles did you have driven before you got your invite? I almost wonder if they, don't give invites out to people who are barely driving, because what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. So my 2018 Model 3 has 75,000 miles on it now. It's less than 3 years old. So why did
Oh,
how the hell did I get 75,000 miles? Well, I travel a lot for work between Los Angeles and Silicon Valley. So
ah,
I used to fly a lot, right? I used to fly like all the time. Like I was like right up there for that companion pass on Southwest,
oh
which
wow.
is like when you fly a lot. Like I was really flying a lot, and what you realize is that it's about a 6 hour drive, and it's a one
Yeah,
hour flight from Los Angeles to Silicon Valley. So when I flew, you have to, get to the airport early. You got to book the flight. The flight ticket is expensive. Then you got to get to the airport. You got to undress. You got to take your belt off. You got to take your shoes off. They got to look at your, laptop, take everything out. And then you get to the gate and they're like, oh, the plane's delayed for an hour. Go get drunk at the bar because, we're not ready. And then you got to Uber to the airport. You got to Uber from the airport. And really, it ended up Autopilot's better. It's a better experience. You get to just sit in your
sure.
car, listen to your own music, just throw all your stuff in your trunk, leave when you want. You can take up to 5 people with you. Supercharging is like less than $20. So I really think like a lot of people are going to start doing this. Compared to short haul flights, Autopilot is going to look like a really
Wow.
good option. And a lot of people already kind of feel this way. So that's how I kind of racked up a ton of miles, and really got to know Autopilot really well. And that probably, I mean, they definitely are trying to give it to the more careful kind of, like, if you know Autopilot really well, you're not going to have any problem with full self-driving because you already understand interventions and paying attention and understanding the limitations of the system. It's really, I think, kind of the people who haven't used it that I'm more worried about, where they,
Mhm.
you don't want someone thinking like, oh, this is autonomous. I'm just going to get in here and turn it on, because it does kind of look like, it can really do everything. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of the new users who I would be more concerned about. And that's why I think they're, trying to give it to the more experienced users first. Maybe they can work around this with training or something, but yeah, if you've used
No,
Autopilot,
that makes
you'll be
sense.
totally
Yeah.
familiar. Yeah.
I mean, I think in the last year, and so it doesn't shock me that I haven't seen any invite. So in total, on my 2017, I have 32,584 miles. Of that, I've probably added 400 in the last year. So,
Right, right. I mean, that's
so
pretty
it's pretty
common.
embarrassing. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
that
Go ahead.
2020 was a crazy year.
Yeah. So I want to know your thoughts on an Apple car.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, Apple, if they make a car, it's not going to be a shitty car. It is going to be a
Yeah.
car that makes people turn their heads and talk about it. And people are going to talk about it if they're able to do it.
Hmm.
And they've been trying to do this for a number of years, really since I think around like 2014. And I think their first shot at an Apple car, it just turned out so expensive, right? So you can imagine like living up to Apple standards of
Yeah.
like luxury and quality and all that. The car just ended up being such a high, like 6-figure car that they were like, okay, this is just kind of ridiculous to even make this car. Like almost nobody's going to be able to buy this, and people are going to laugh at us. So they scrapped the project and they kind of focused on software. And I think the success of Tesla has really made them realize like they want to get more serious about it. So they have been looking more at this recently. There was some talk in the news that by 2025 they wanted to try and get a product out. But it's not simple, even for a company like Apple that has all the money in the world. making cars is super hard. It's super capital intensive. And Apple is basically going around because, they don't manufacture their own products. They've got Foxconn and other companies that manufacture their iPhones and other products. And they wanted to find a manufacturer who could make the Apple car. So they were going around to Hyundai, to Kia, to other car manufacturers, even to Ferrari, I think, and saying, okay, who can help us make this Apple car? We're going to basically tell you what parts to put in. It's going to be our software. It's going to be our brand, our experience, and you just make the car. And basically the car manufacturers told them like, well, why the hell am I going to just be your contract manufacturer, basically like making this car? And that's going to be like a competitor. And now I'm kind of like lowering myself to like a manufacturer rather than like an OEM brand. So there's some challenges, but it does seem like they're serious about a car. It'll be like at least 4 or 5 years before they have something ready to show. But this is really just shows you that EVs are just a whole new frontier. A lot of people who never would have made a combustion engine car are going to now try and make an electric vehicle, and it's going to be a whole new frontier. When you look at like Volkswagen having to compete with like Tesla, but now also having to compete with Google and Apple, companies that have way more money than them, it's going to be interesting in the auto market. Things are heating up, not just from Apple and Lucid and all these guys, but there's going to be tons of new players.
I'm just surprised that Apple would let themselves, in my opinion, and what do we know, but get so far behind. I mean, like, why? Like, where's their car that's at least on the road gaining some miles, And yet, meanwhile, they've got ads of, hiring people to work on LED panels inside the car to master the look of the car. Like, isn't the issue right now the FSD? Forget about the LEDs. Like, let's actually get you working here. Like, is it possible? And this is a big question, even for like a Neo or a Lucid. Is it possible that these car companies, even Apple, can just get a car out there and then in the future slap on the FSD? Like, once, let's say Elon cracks this vision driving system, is everyone else going to be able to just catch up really quickly? Is that moat going to shrink as people are like, that's how he did it. Let's tear apart the car. Okay, I see. We'll get that data within a year. No problem. Let's go.
Yeah, so they definitely were working on autonomous software, but I mean, this is really, really hard. And like, this is the kind of thing, like Elon likes to work on just batshit crazy problems. Like, okay, we're going to land a rocket, and the thing just keeps exploding. And he's like, okay, we're going to keep trying, we're going to land this rocket. And this is really hard. Making a car is just super capital intensive. You got to build this whole car. It requires a lot of money. And if you mess up, you can kill somebody. So it's really, really difficult. There's all kinds of safety restrictions. The data, I think, is really going to provide a moat in a way that's surprising to people, and a way that people aren't familiar with. It's kind of like, okay, Apple made iPhone, Google made Android. And, you can say, okay, Android's better, iPhone's better, but they're really kind of the same. You can run the same app on an Android or an iPhone. With AI, it's different, because all of this data, all of this experience is really what makes the system good. And I think what people are going to find is that, this data is a moat that is going to make it really hard to replicate. And let me tell you, the difference between like a good phone and a bad phone is one thing. The difference between a good self-driving car and a shitty self-driving car is huge. Nobody wants to get in the shitty one. It's painful, it is slower, it might be scary. So I think this is going to provide a huge moat. It's not to say that nobody is ever going to catch it. Like Elon said, in 10 years, everyone will be able to do it. But in the medium term, this data is going to provide a huge moat. And I think Tesla's experience trying to do this for years is really going to give them an advantage for some time.
Yeah. I think a lot of these companies, they're lagging behind. So okay, so in terms of stocks, are you focusing? Are you just solo on Tesla, or are you getting into some of the other manufacturers as well, or even maybe like the materials, companies like MP Materials or battery manufacturers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in the battery space. A lot of these SPACs, I think, are just kind of like garbage. Like you saw
Like quantum?
Nikola.
Is that what you're saying? Or
Well,
what?
QuantumScape, I think, you know, they're 5 years away from launching a product, right? And you
Mm,
just saw Volkswagen's Power Day, and they weren't really
yeah.
talking about QuantumScape. They were really saying, okay, we're going to be doing this until 2030. People really, need to realize that with something like QuantumScape, it is really, you don't know until 2025 whether it's going to be the best technology at the time. We don't know what the world's going to look like in 2025. So I definitely think like Nikola, QuantumScape, Fisker, a lot of these SPACs are garbage. But there's going to be a lot of great investment opportunities of all kind in the sector, in batteries, in autonomy. I think NVIDIA and Intel Mobileye are ones to watch. And there's going to be a lot of great players. It's not just going to be Tesla, but Tesla is definitely, I think, one of the most interesting ones.
Yeah, and I'm playing. This is a video from your channel here. I mean, this looks incredible already so far. I mean, we saw some head-on traffic come, and I mean, look at this. This is a crazy intersection. Like, I get nervous and crap like this.
Yeah.
This is incredible. So, I mean, is this kind of experience kind of sheltering you from getting into even investing? Like, let's put it this way, would you invest in Neo or Lucid or Volkswagen? Or are you just kind of like, nope, just Tesla right now?
Well, Neo, I think, is a company that spends a lot of money on some ridiculous things. They have some great products. So, they could be successful. This is a really tough business. Everyone needs to realize that by default, everyone is going to fail. Like until very recently, Tesla was like on the verge of bankruptcy, right? Like this is not an easy business to be in. And Tesla really got lucky a bunch of times. Lightning really had to strike a ton of times for them to be able to survive this long. Now they got $20 billion in the bank, but this is like a cutthroat industry. And not only is it totally cutthroat, if you win, the profit margins are pretty thin. So, obviously there's going to be a lot of winners. It's not going to be like Tesla sells every car in the world. I imagine them selling maybe like 10 to 20% of the cars in 10 years in like a really good scenario. Sure. So there's going to be other winners too. But it's hard. And I would just urge people to be cautious. Don't just say like, this looks like a great product, they're going to be successful. The financial aspect of it is really complicated. And there's a lot of interesting companies out there.
Can be a lot of losers for sure. So what about what do you think about Tesla's other products that they're coming out with, like the Cybertruck, the semi-truck? Do these things have a future? Like, are people actually going to drive this Cybertruck around? Is it ever going to show up? Is it even going to be approved to be street legal? And then we get the semi. Are people going to actually adopt these electric vehicle semis?
Yeah, I think this is going to be really, really huge. And it's going to just completely change the way people think about EVs. Right now people think about EVs as like, it's a small car, right? It's a, maybe a sedan or like a small SUV or something like that. The limitations of battery technology haven't really let us build huge trucks before. But now Tesla has this new technology, the 4680 cells, and the cell vehicle integration, where they're actually like baking the battery cells right into the car. And when people see the Cybertruck, it's like this massive kind of steel, just crazy thing. It's going to change their idea about what an EV is. And it's still a Tesla. It's still got 0 to 60 in like, 3-second acceleration. It's still got autopilot. It's got full self-driving. Same with the semi. They're going to be able to put the semi on the road and have people use autopilot. It's going to stay in the lane well. It'll have full self-driving, where you can really have, one truck driver driving multiple trucks, or even autonomous trucks in the future. So I think this is going to be really huge. I mean, America loves trucks, right? You look at what are the top selling cars. the top 3 selling cars by units, they're all pickup trucks, right? America loves their pickup trucks. I think it's like a very American thing. And people, I think, have been kind of like more dismissive of EVs. It's like, okay, it's just an EV. It's like a small car. That's not what I want. Even, you know, some people who have an EV, they also have like a big pickup truck. So I think it's really going to change the idea of what people think an EV is and make progress towards this like world where we have every car be electric. And, you know, Ford is now doing an electric F-150. Chevy's doing like an electric Silverado or something like that. And you look at these cars, Ford sells like 1 million units of the F-150 every year, right? Just the F-150 all in North America alone. And you look at the top
selling cars.
yeah, it's crazy. And the top 3 are all pickup trucks. And then below that, what is it? It's SUVs, right? So pickup trucks and SUVs. So you think about Tesla. We've been saying, oh, you know, Tesla's so great. They're growing, blah, blah, blah. But they haven't even been competing. They haven't even been trying to compete in the major markets, which are pickup trucks and SUVs. Only now recently did they do the Model Y.
Yeah.
So they're really about to take
a
bite. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the old battery technology. So the new 4680 technology, it's going to let you do much bigger vehicles. It's going to let you do trucks at a much lower cost, at a cost that's the same as a gas car. So that's going to be really exciting. And starting in Austin and Berlin, that's the first 2 places where this new battery technology is going to launch. So as soon as the Texas factory's up, it's going to start pumping out some trucks and SUVs, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it. They don't really have a mommy car. I mean, you got the X, but the X is the 7-seat option is the back seats are a joke. You can't get back there unless you have the 6-seat option, but then you don't have the 7 anymore, right? It's so difficult to get to those back seats. You know, you're not. I mean, I don't think you're able to sandwich 2 car seats back there. But even if you were, it'd be a disaster to try to climb back there because I've got that 7. I can't. Yeah. If I put 7 seats up, I can't fit a stroller in the trunk anymore. Like the trunk is gone. Right. I've got no space. I could barely put a cooler of beer in the back if I have a car full of 7. Like the cars are still like this is so interesting. What you're saying is they really haven't competed yet. I mean, look at the market for the Escalade, where you've got, you know, a car that could fit 7-8 people and comfortably. And you still have a trunk. You still have a room to put a couple strollers and suitcases or whatever. You can't even do that with the Teslas right now. You know, you've got the 3 and the Y, but those are even smaller, right? So, wow. I mean, that's a good point. You get to these new battery. I didn't even think about that. You get to these new battery techs. You can now open up into the minivan space, for example. And I know a lot of people bag on minivans, but if you're a mom, and I know there are even lots of moms that bag on minivans, but there are also a lot of moms that are like, no. The convenience of the doors, the space. I mean, talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really been about the battery technology. So you could have a big van or a big truck, but the range is going to suck, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make these trade-offs. Tesla wants to make a vehicle that is really going to have the range that you need. This new battery technology is going to change that. I mean, the Cybertruck is like a massive vehicle. It's got a huge bed. You can throw a ton of stuff in there. You got a ton of room for people. And really, this new battery technology, which they're putting into production in Austin and Berlin, is going to enable all kinds of vehicles that didn't exist before. Everything from a $25,000 car on up, and huge, you know, big trucks, stuff we haven't seen from Tesla before. And not only that, it'll give us more range at a lower price. So right now you've seen EVs are kind of like, you can justify the price if you say, this car, you know, a Tesla Model 3 is a little more expensive than say a Toyota Camry, but the cost is actually pretty comparable. If you look at what you're going to spend on gas over the life of the car, and you look at what you're going to spend on maintenance, it's actually pretty similar to a Camry. But, you know, you're still paying a higher monthly payment. And people are saying, you know, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to drive that much, so I'm never going to get that kind of savings. What you're going to see now with this new battery technology is not only bigger vehicles, but the same sticker price. So you can get the same monthly payment as, say, an F-150. You'll be able to get a Cybertruck at similar prices. And it's going to have more range, too.
Yeah, that's something that's really incredible because I bought a 2008 Tesla Roadster just to really one of the main reasons I got it was I just wanted to see, first of all, I wanted to appreciate again how far we've come. And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
when I got into it, I got into the Roadster. I'm like, it's such a fun car. It's great. But after I drove the Roadster for like 2 or 3 days and I got back into my Model X, I'm like, oh my God, like it's literally like, oh, it felt it. And then what do I know? But it almost kind of felt like that. What it might feel like if I could imagine a scenario of going from like 1950 to 2030, because it's just the technology is so advanced and it really has come so far. It really made me
Yeah.
appreciate. Oh wow, I totally forgot how amazing it is to not have to do anything on the highway. Whereas with the Roadster,
Yeah.
I've got to do everything because it doesn't have that. But the
Right.
second thing I realized was the battery's still freaking fine. And
Mhm.
that's, like 13-year-old technology. So I can only imagine that these 4680s, when they come out and people start realizing in 2030, 2035, oh my gosh, the 2020 batteries are still here and they're fine. Maybe some of
Yeah.
that fear over batteries will go away. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got 75,000 miles on my old Model 3 and it still runs just like it's new. So I think battery technology is already pretty great. This new battery technology is going to be even better. Right now, it lasts like 300,000 to 500,000 miles for the current
Mhm.
batteries they have in their cars. These new batteries in Austin and Berlin, they're going to last over 1 million miles. So you could drive like 100,000 miles a year, which is going to be kind of common with autonomy, I think, and the car will still last 10 years. And going to your point about the Roadster, it's really interesting because if you actually look at the Roadster in a picture compared to Tesla's other cars, it's just amazing how small it is, right?
Oh my
It's a
gosh, it is so tiny. You're sitting on the floor,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's a really, really tiny car. And
Yeah.
what's interesting is the Model X is much bigger, but it's actually got more range than the,
That's a good point.
tiny little Roadster. So it's amazing just in, what, 6 years or so. I think the Roadster came out
Yeah.
in like 2008 and the Model X came out in around like 2016. So about 8 years.
Yeah.
You have this much bigger car that actually has more range and a bigger battery than this tiny little Roadster. And I think that's kind of going to be like the way we think about it with the Cybertruck. It's going to be another level of that, where like you've got a
Wow.
much bigger car with 500 miles of range. So you're like, holy shit, this car is massive and it's got more range than my Model X. So the rate of improvement on this is just like insane. And as they just accelerate production, it's going to get really cheap to make a ton of batteries. And what that means is they can put more batteries in the car, have it be more lightweight, and just make better products for people where they're like, I don't need a gas car. This is great.
Yeah. Gosh, I haven't even thought about that. I mean, that's great. What do you think about there's now talk about like an India facility coming. Is this just going to be the I mean, I feel like I should try to look this up, but I feel like the average price of a car in India is going to have to be a lot less. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is this going to be like the intro of the sub 20K car?
Yeah, I think this is kind of interesting. A lot of people have been kind of scratching their head on this because obviously, you know, most people in India probably can't afford a Tesla. There are some people who can, in kind of like the upper, more wealthier people. But I think what they're doing in India is really focused on just getting the car into the market.
Hmm.
They are, India has really high import taxes. So if you just send some parts into India and assemble them there, I think that you can really get around some of these import taxes. I don't really know what they're planning. It's kind of a mystery. It doesn't really make sense to me. Um, they're with this new technology, this new battery technology. It costs 70% less to set up a battery factory than it did before. So I think you're going to see
Whoa.
them set up yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I think they're going to set up a lot more battery factories, and you've already seen it. Like just not long ago, they only had the California factory. Now they got one in China. They've got one coming in Germany. They've got one coming in Texas. So they're building a lot more factories. And I think I heard they've got one in like Indonesia coming, maybe. Indonesia has a lot of nickel, which is like an important metal for the batteries. So you're definitely going to see a lot more battery factories. and car factories, and they're actually going to be integrated because now the battery is the car. The battery is actually like the bottom structural part of the car. It's not a separate piece. So you're going to see these integrated battery car factories, more of them. I don't really know what their plans are besides, Berlin and Austin, but definitely they want to make the cars close to where the customers are.
Are you worried about like the future availability of lithium and the other materials that are required for these batteries? I mean, right now it just feels like it's a big old shortage.
Definitely, there is kind of, I think, we need to make a ton of battery cells, like at a level that we've never seen before, way more battery cells than before. So naturally, that kind of brings in the raw material question, like, okay, you need these metals. And a lot of it can be, you can do some recycling. So that's actually one of the best ways, surprisingly, to get these metals. If you mine it, you'll get like maybe 1% of like the ore that you mine has actual metal that you want. But when you take it from the old cars, you can actually get like 20-30%. So it actually, so it's actually like saves a lot of money to just recycle it. So I think it's kind of like some of these old cars come back and the battery pack gets swapped out from like an old Model X or something. They'll be able to take a lot of metals from there. But definitely, like, this is something Elon has said. He's like begging people like, hey, if anybody has nickel, we will give you a huge contract for a long time for nickel and some of these metals. And I think it's definitely something to watch. If you're an EV investor, it's definitely something to be cognizant of. But the free market has, this special quality to it, which is just that if there's a price to be made, if there's money to be made on getting these metals, and people need a bunch of battery cells, which is happening, not just from Tesla, but you've seen Volkswagen and others saying, hey, we're going to go all in on EVs and we're going to need a ton of battery cells. The market has a way of coming up with creative solutions, not just what you'd expect, but people find these metals in new places. They're able to find it from other products or recycle it or find new ways of mining it. Like Tesla's found a new way of mining lithium, which they say can give them all the lithium they need in the world from just like their Nevada location. And people come up with new technologies. Like there's going to be entirely new ways of making batteries and storing energy that we haven't even thought of yet, because the potential for anyone who does it, they're going to get rich, right? Because everyone's like, oh my God, how do I store all this electricity for these electric cars? So there's going to be a ton of innovation here in the battery space. And I think it'll come down to our laptops, come down to our computers. In 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if you've got a laptop that just lasts all month, and can charge in like 5 minutes, because there's going to be just a tremendous amount of innovation in batteries.
So I need a 4680 cell in my laptop.
Yeah, something like that. That would be great. Yeah.
So what do you think about NIO's battery swapping then? Earlier, you kind of mentioned that they're good at wasting money. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Well, I think some of these startups, they want to be super flashy. They want to, NIO built all of these NIO lounges. It's kind of like one of the great examples I think of, where it was like this super luxurious lounge where, you could go charge your NIO or whatever. And, they had to shut a lot of those down because they almost went bankrupt. Spending money on this stuff. And I think with battery swapping, a lot of people are like, oh, battery swapping, this is great because I live in an apartment and I don't have a place where I can charge. So battery swapping, especially in China, a lot of people live in apartments. So battery swapping really seems like an attractive solution to people. But the problem is, we were just talking about this shortage of cells. Like we need a ton of cells and we can't get enough. So if we need a ton of cells and we can't get enough, now you're telling me that basically for every car, there needs to be 2 battery packs, one in the car and one sitting around charging, waiting to be swapped into a car. And then imagine like you're on the road, you're taking the battery pack out, you're putting a new battery pack in. Man, you're just asking for trouble. And when you look at like our phones, you can't take the battery out. Since the iPhone started, the battery has just been in there. And why did Apple do that? It's not just to screw people over like some people think. It actually allowed them to get better battery life because they could make the battery in a weird shape. They could really put it in there and make it a part of the phone and get better performance by integrating it. And that's what you're seeing Tesla do now, where the way they're making the car is going to be entirely new. They're just casting the middle piece of the car and they're putting the cells right inside that middle piece of the car. And then they're casting one piece for the front, one piece for the rear. It's like a Lego, right? So the whole middle skateboard is actually the battery pack. So before it was like, okay, here's the middle part of the car and then here's the battery pack and you bolt on the battery pack. Now it's like the middle part of the car is the battery pack. So this is going to be something that is just tied to the car forever. It's a 1,000,000-mile life and it's never removed from the car. And it's going to make the car handle better. It's going to make the car perform better and it's going to give you longer life because that battery is not removable. So Elon said, and I'm not an expert on this, but I tend to believe him just based on his record of delivering great products. He said that any car that doesn't do cell to vehicle integration, where the battery pack actually becomes a part of the car, it's not a separate piece that you can take in and out, but the battery pack is the car. Any company that doesn't do that, he thinks is not going to be competitive. And it makes sense to me.
Wow.
And you've also seen Volkswagen do this too now. They've been talking about doing a similar thing to Tesla.
A structural battery?
Yeah. So it does seem like this is going to be the future.
So not so good for NIO unless they want to adapt again, but then that's expensive, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tough business, and NIO might have something because, they're trying to specialize in the Chinese market. And, if you live in an apartment and there's no charger, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to use an EV? So I definitely think there's something to what they're doing. They're not stupid, but it's super capital intensive. There's a lot of problems with it. And I'm not sure that it's the future, but, we'll see what happens,
Yeah. Why do you think, and I want to touch on this now, why would Cathie Wood over at ARC not provide any value to the future energy business of Tesla, the solars, the power packs, the inverters, what's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of puzzling to me too. I think her valuation is pretty conservative, actually. Like, it's kind of crazy. I mean, she put a price target like $3,000 that would make Tesla worth like trillions of dollars. But the funny thing is, it's actually kind of conservative. And I think what Tesla is doing with batteries is really something to watch because essentially, you have, let's say, you want to move everything to electricity, home heating, you want to move cars all to electricity instead of using gas. So we're going to need a ton of electricity. And we don't want to be getting it from coal or natural gas or these electricity sources that really generate emissions. You want to generate renewable energy. But what's the problem with renewable energy? The problem is it's not always there when you need it, right? So the sun is shining during the day, but people want to use the power at night. And the wind might be blowing, sometimes, and, you don't really have it at the exact right time where you want to use it. So what's the key here? It's batteries. It's the same thing Tesla's been specializing on with their vehicles, is the key to storing renewable energy and getting us all on renewable energy. And Tesla has some really interesting stuff. I mean, they're doing this mega pack, huge battery in Texas, and they've got this auto bidder software that does automatic energy trading, automatically like stores the energy and buys and sells the energy. And they're actually integrating this in their cars too, and their power walls. So this is super, super interesting. Rather than having like a big battery, you can have, like in South Australia and in some other places, a bunch of power walls in people's homes that all act together and coordinate to act like a big battery. And they're extending this to people's cars too. So what does this mean? Like, instead of having a big battery in the city that's powering the whole city, you can essentially have like thousands of power walls in people's homes. And the grid or Tesla is able to send commands and say, okay, right now there's tons of renewable energy. I want you to charge now. And okay, now I want you to discharge and do this kind of automated energy trading and actually make money for your car doing this energy trading and providing renewable energy to the grid so that we're not generating any emissions, all like controlled by software. So this is really the key to getting to all renewable energy, is like using thousands of batteries in a distributed way to store the renewable energy and use it. And energy, I think, is a bigger business than cars, because you sell some cars, but the business to sell energy to those cars, and not only the Tesla cars, but all the other cars, it's bigger. Like if you look at the oil and gas companies and the car companies, the oil and gas companies are worth more because you make a lot more money in energy than you make in cars. So Elon himself thinks that one day the energy business is going to be as big as the car business. So if you want to believe him on that, double ARC's price target to factor in energy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I was really like, I love purposefully in my models leaving out things that I think could be potential extra profit centers, because it's a way of building conservativeness into my projections. And I've left out many things, and usually I'll get comments like, "Oh my gosh, you didn't even include this or this or this." It's like, settle down. Like, I'd rather make my investment decisions off some conservativeness, and then if it's better, it's better. Hey, great. Is that what Kathy's doing here, or is this a potential signal that she's just not either fully researched on the energy, or is she just not? Does she not believe in the energy division, or is it just the conservativeness? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you want to be conservative, because in the real world things go wrong, and we can't predict the future. So it's good to be conservative. Leaves you less chance of being wrong in your investment decisions. I don't think she underestimates it, but she doesn't want to look like a total wacko. Like, people already think she's crazy. When she had her Tesla $4,000 price target back in the day, people were like, this girl's crazy. And what happened? That actually ended up coming true. So I think if you factor in, just look at Bitcoin, right? She left off the Bitcoin. Tesla has made $1 billion on their Bitcoin holdings in what? Just a few weeks since they started, doing this. So like, you can't really like predict these things, fully. And I think she's trying to be a little conservative. Like, most of the Wall Street is focusing on automotive, right? A lot of Wall Street's kind of view on this is like, Tesla energy is like not serious. So I think that's kind of why she just wanted to be conservative and just say, just based on the automotive business, just based on autonomy, this is our price target. And obviously, not only is energy going to be a huge business, but what else is Tesla going to do? Like, what businesses are they going to get in? What crazy ideas is Elon Musk going to have? We don't really know. So I think there is kind of an X factor for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so incredible about it, is you're right. I mean, I personally, for example, I think Wall Street doesn't even give. I mean, it's similar to what we're seeing here with Kathy's valuation. I think Wall Street's giving zero valuation to the solar division. They see solar sales having declined since 2017, and they're like, that's nothing. But they don't realize this is a transition from Solar City to a disruptive model of solar leasing. And like you mentioned with the auto bidder program, geez, man. I mean, how could you not be investing in Tesla? I guess there's so much hate about valuation, but this is the future, and I think a lot of folks look at Tesla like, well, the stock's already gone up exponentially, can't go up anymore. I think we're at the beginning, man. I think, what are we here, 2021? I think the next 30 years going to be the craziest time for energy and batteries and Tesla. Like, the growth is insane here. What's your take on this?
Yeah, man. I mean, you said it so well. I really completely agree. I think that when you look at, for example, Solar City, what was really going on with Solar City is they were trying this really innovative solar leasing model where, you just pay them monthly and they buy the whole solar panel. So that was a financial failure, right? So Solar City essentially ran out of money. So when Solar City ran out of money, it's like, okay, we got to go out. We got to get more money. Either we get more money from Wall Street, or Elon said, I think Tesla could actually buy this business. I think Tesla could really could really turn it around. So what they did is they said, okay, we're going to fold it into Tesla and we're going to cut all the waste. We're not going to have people knocking door to door. We're not going to, have this deal with Home Depot. We're going to cut the expenses and we're going to fold it into Tesla's thing where, you can just order it on Tesla's website. When you buy a car, they say, do you want solar? So there was kind of that transition in the business, but it really actually fits really well because what is the key to solar? It's batteries. It's the same exact thing that they've been doing in their cars. If you have a great battery for cars and you can produce that at a low cost, that's going to work really well with solar too. And you've now seen that solar has become the cheapest form of electricity. Coal, natural gas, forget it. The cheapest thing is large scale solar. And people probably don't realize this, that 80% or something of the new energy capacity in the United States was solar. Like, people don't realize how just out of nowhere this thing is just growing like crazy, and is going to continue growing in the future, especially as battery costs go down. So yeah, I think it's just going to be huge. And everyone loves it. The idea of just having energy from the sun, using it, and knowing you're not generating any emissions. It's great. If it was low cost enough for people, everyone would want to do it.
What's your take on hydrogen? When's hydrogen actually going to be popular? Does it even have a chance?
Well, hydrogen's really tough because where do you get it, right? I mean, people like to say hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, but really, where do you get hydrogen from? The great advantage that electricity has is that it's already everywhere. Every house has electricity. We've already got this enormous distribution system for electricity. We've got power lines. So that's a huge advantage where I can have an electric car. I can go out to the middle of nowhere and I can just plug it into any old outlet and I can charge based off that. It might not be fast. It might take like a whole day to charge the car off a normal outlet, but at least it's going to work. Meanwhile, you got these people who get hydrogen cars and they're like, what the hell? I can't go anywhere. There's no hydrogen stations, right? And, then even your local one hydrogen station you've got, they run out of hydrogen. And, there's some horror stories where some guy was like an Uber driver. His wife, had to leave and go to, Texas. Literally his whole family got broken up because he got this hydrogen car. So there's really, it's just a really tough chicken and egg problem. You can't have any hydrogen.
What you said
stations.
there is,
yeah,
I think that's so true. It's the chicken and egg problem, honestly. And this is where I have to say something about a Nikola in a positive way, which I know is crazy to say and unpopular these days. But the vision of their Badger, where you have a battery in the car that's a 500-mile pack or whatever, even 300-mile pack, right? Doesn't matter so much. But then you also have a fuel cell where that doubles you. That gives you the other 300 on top of that. So or another 500. So you're 600 to 1,000-mile range. To me, that vision right there was the most brilliant Trojan horse ever for hydrogen, because now you get people buying hydrogen cars that are like Teslas, right? But it's like you solved the chicken and egg problem, because now you have hydrogen cars on the road. Now it makes sense to have a hydrogen station because you've actually got people driving around with hydrogen, unlike the Toyota Mirai where the sales, have been horrible. So what's your take on that? And maybe something like that actually solving this chicken and egg problem, or is it just putting too much crap on a car and why bother?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this kind of Nikola Badger approach where you have a hybrid BEV, it can still work as a battery car, but you've also got hydrogen to extend it. It's a new idea that hasn't really been done before. And it could potentially solve the chicken and the egg problem somewhat. But of course, the problem was the Nikola Badger was never really a real truck. It was more a Photoshop concept that they kind of sold to people. And then that ended up kind of totally blowing up. But, it's really appealing to a lot of people since really the Bush era, when Bush was really pushing for hydrogen. Hydrogen has been really attractive to people because it's just like what we know, right? You go to the hydrogen station just like a gas station. You can fill up. It's quick. You're not waiting, an hour to charge or something like that. You just fill it up and you're good to go. So that has always been kind of like appealing to people. But I think the reality of it is the distribution problem and the chicken and the egg problem is so hard that by the time you really solve it, battery technology has just advanced so much and is just continuing to, that it's really going to kind of eliminate all the benefits. I mean, already with
Wow.
V3 supercharging, you can plug in for 5 minutes and really get 75 to 100 miles of range. So you're really seeing batteries pick it up from the rear, and pretty much everyone, even Volkswagen, seems to agree that like hydrogen's not great for passenger cars. Some people are saying, okay, maybe for like shipping, like big ships, big cargo ships, or something where batteries don't work. But the uses for hydrogen just keep getting less and less. First, people were saying cars. Okay, no, it's not going to work for cars. Okay, maybe long haul trucking. Okay, well, it's not really going to work for trucking either. I mean, Nikola's still trying to do that, but I'm not really counting on it. And it's just been less and less. Hydrogen has been losing the race to batteries, and I think with the scale EVs are gaining now, it's just going to keep batteries are going to be tough to compete with. So I'm not bullish on hydrogen.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said just made me realize something that I think is really, really interesting. And thank you for bringing this up about how quickly you could charge on basically a low bat. Here's a crazy a thought that I have. So, and I want you to comment on this. If you have so right now my Tesla Model X is like 220 miles. So if I'm at 0, or 5 miles on my battery pack, I can charge this thing up to 50% pretty freaking fast. That first 50% is easy. Certainly the first 10% is a joke. I mean, it's like a flash. And I got my first, 20 to 50 miles is a couple minutes, like you say. And then getting to 50% pretty fast. It's that last, 30% that's a lot harder, 20, 30%. So what's interesting is I get to 50%, to 100 miles. Hey, that's great. I'm there 15 minutes these days with some of the chargers, probably even faster with the V3 superchargers. But here's where I just got a little mind blown is, wait a minute. If you have a Cybertruck and your battery pack is 500 miles, getting to 50% fast is 250 miles. That's good enough already, right? But here's where it gets even crazier. What if you now put 4, because I think they're planning on doing 4x. What if you put 4x, the battery packs essentially into of a Cybertruck into a semi? Now these things are larger. So say you get 1,000-mile range. You plug in, you get to 50% like that. Boom, that's 500-mile range. What do I care about hydrogen? Geez, I could 20 minutes be at 500-mile range potentially in the future because the packs are so large that 50% is so easy, but yet it's so huge.
Yeah, Kevin, I think you totally hit the nail on the head. And you're already going to see with these 500-mile cars, I mean, you're going to see 500-mile EVs this year, okay, in 2021. So the Plaid Plus Model S, the Lucid Air is also claiming to be a 500-mile range. The Cybertruck is also claiming to be a 500-mile range. And the Semi is also claiming to be a 500-mile range. So it wasn't that long ago that we didn't even have 400-mile EVs. Now we've got 500-mile EVs coming, and they're going to get to 250 miles like that. It's going to keep going. We're going to see 1,000-mile EVs. So just the rate of improvement in battery technology, and I think the competitiveness, people competing with each other to give you the fastest charge, to have the highest range, it's going to produce really good results. And it's just advancing at an incredible rate.
It's mind blowing. It really is. I mean, there's no way I think you can't have an EV in your portfolio when you're investing these days. So, people, I want to touch on eVTOLs. I know people say, hey, hydrogen's going to be the way for eVTOLs. Elon's mentioned the idea of these eVTOLs. When do you see these things as a future? Is it even going to be necessary with boring tunnels? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, my friend Gally over at Hyperchain, she's just super, into the eVTOL stuff. It's super interesting. Like, if you think about the concept, essentially, it's like a drone people can sit in, right? So we've all seen like these drones from like DJI, and then these companies. They're just amazing, right? Like
They're great.
you can just do crazy things with these drones. But they really have a flight time of like 30 minutes. So you imagine putting a person in there. Really what you need battery technology to get around like 400 to 500 watt hours per kilogram. And then this stuff starts to become really like really viable. It's it's crazy. It's really tough to predict, how this is going to play out. But you can imagine, like, in like New York City or like getting from like San Jose to San Francisco or stuff, it could be really fast. But it's also going to be really noisy. There's no doubt this is going to exist in the future. It's really just, again, a matter of the battery technology getting there. Once the battery technology gets there, it's going to be possible technologically. And then you're going to see kind of, move forward on the regulatory thing and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if, by the end of the decade, you are in Manhattan and you've got this Uber chopper service. I mean, they've already started doing Uber choppers with regular helicopters, but like, for people who've been to like Manhattan and tried to get to JFK, it's a long drive, right? So I think sometime this decade, we'll have a situation where you go to the roof of a skyscraper, you get into one of these essentially drone things with, like 4 propellers, and it just flies you to the airport in like a ridiculously short amount of time. So again, I think it really is just about battery technology. Could you do it with hydrogen? Yeah, you probably could do it with hydrogen a little bit sooner, but again, you've got the same problem of fueling. Like, where do I get this hydrogen? And the other thing I don't like about hydrogen is it costs 4 times as much to make hydrogen from renewable energy as it does to make it from fossil fuels. So the majority of the hydrogen supply we have, it's like you have these natural gas and oil pipelines, and they're able to kind of do some chemical reactions on that natural gas and produce hydrogen in a way that generates emissions. So I think it's going to be really tempting to do that. I like batteries personally. It is possible, and also like hydrogen's kind of explosive. I mean, getting in a fucking flying drone copter like is already kind of scary. Where I'm in this like drone, you're probably already pissing your pants a little bit, and then having like a big ass hydrogen tank that like a bird can run into. I mean, like everyone remembers the Hindenburg, like that is that happened like 100 years ago, and people still remember that,
Oh yeah.
So I'm bullish on batteries. So we'll see.
Nice. Okay, so bullish on batteries, bullish on I mean, what do you? Okay, let me ask you this: what are you not bullish about with Tesla?
Well, I think they're really growing really fast, which obviously is a good thing, but growing pains, right? So are they going to be able to really, really deliver just, when you go to a BMW or Mercedes dealership, you can say a lot of things about them ripping you off and, selling you all kinds of junk, extended warranties, but, they really treat you really well. And just scaling, they're now growing in so many different areas. Can they really tap into all these markets, really service the cars well, really take care of the customers and make them happy? I think the company is just kind of in this weird place where it's now become like one of the most valuable car companies in the world, but it's really just like Elon shooting the shit, in some ways. And it's still run like a startup in so many ways. Like the team is super small, they're super agile, and that's what like makes them innovative. But at the same time, like, you do hope the company kind of matures to like kind of an Apple level where, it's just a really tightly run ship and customers are like, super happy. They're being communicated with well and really taken care of on service, on just the whole ownership experience, that it's not, it's not just a great piece of technology, but it's really going to be great to own the product over the years. And, Tesla's going to grow into a mature business, and I think they will, but it's not easy. to scale a business, to run all over the world, the world's a big place. You got different languages, different cultures. It's going to be a challenge, but they're probably further ahead on that than say Lucid or Neo or some of these other companies. So starting a new brand is hard. That's why these legacy autos have had such an advantage, because there's a lot of moat around this industry.
Is it possible though that these legacies they're going to have too much of a difficult time adapting or sort of getting away from ICE and getting into
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real concern. You look at, say, Porsche; they've got the most profitable sports cars in the world. So you look at like the Porsche 911. Nobody makes more money on any car than the Porsche 911. It's just insanely profitable, and they've got all kinds of options. So, it's kind of like the innovator's dilemma. Clayton Christensen talked about this, where, why do big companies fail? It's not because they're stupid or someone smarter comes along. There's certain forces to being a big company that just kind of weigh you down and make it harder to innovate. So you're making all this money on gas cars. It's your bread and butter. It's paying the bills. It's putting your kids through college. How am I going to come in here with an EV now and say, hey, well, this EV is way better than the gas car. Yeah. It is much better, and you should buy this. And the problem is they're actually losing money on the EVs because it's a new business. When you start a new business, it's always not as profitable as first. You have to make huge investments into the batteries and all this stuff. It's not as fun of a business. They really want to sell you the gas car. But the future is the EVs. So they don't want to go and say, fuck the gas cars, these are just garbage, you want the EVs. No, they're making all the money on the gas cars. So it's a tough position to be in. Even if you put Elon Musk in charge of Volkswagen, it's still a tough problem. I don't know if he would be able to solve it, because you've got to manage the business. You've got to keep the unions happy. I mean, people are like worried because they're making engines and they don't want to get fired, right? So it's a really tough situation. Yeah.
That's so true. You've really got this, and you hear about this like in Germany. I feel like there have been many reporters. They'll purposefully go to like a Volkswagen dealership, and it's like, hey, these are my needs. What kind of car should I get? And it just seems like even the sales folks right now, it's a big push towards the gas, and it makes you wonder, like, are the incentives even properly aligned here?
Right, they're not exactly. The dealers make more money when they sell the gas car. There's more bonuses, and that's because all the financial incentives are for the manufacturer and the dealership to sell the gas cars. And people don't realize the dealerships only make half of their profit selling you the car. The other half of their profit comes from servicing the car. And they'll sometimes give you a good deal on the car, maybe even lose a little bit of money on the car, because they know you're going to come in, you're going to be servicing, they're the local dealership, you're going to be bringing it in. So now you've got an EV where it doesn't really need to be serviced. It barely needs any service at all. Like, you got to change the tires and fill the washer fluid. That's like really about it. Even the brakes, because it has regenerative braking, it's not even wearing on the brakes as much. So it's tough for dealerships. I mean, you're going to lose 50% of your profit. And a lot of these guys are just like car guys. They just love gas cars, even more than the financial aspect. It's emotional for them. They love the sound of the engine, and it's going to be a big transition financially and emotionally for people to wrap their heads around. But, this is what happens. We had flip phones, and then all of a sudden we had smartphones. We had, desktop computers, and then we had laptops. We had internet at home. Now we've got internet everywhere. Things change. So this is, I think, an industry where there hasn't really been a lot of change in 100 years. Because it's so hard to start a car company, there hasn't been a lot of innovation. And for the first time, there's like this big innovation, and it's really rocking the industry. So things are getting shaked up. Where the cards will fall, who will survive, who will die, we don't know, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I remember when I was 12, so what, 17 years ago, I remember being at this pizza place with my dad and saying, "Gosh, Dad, it'd be so cool if I could just play RuneScape like here while we're having pizza, like have like because I mean we had laptops obviously, but have a laptop
Yeah,
that could actually have internet while I'm at this restaurant, and it's like." Looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, how far we've come. Like, come on, that's a joke
yeah,
now. We're walking around 4K live streaming places, right? It's like, oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I mean, that's
Uh,
so true. Like the years are long, but the decades are short. And we don't realize because this stuff all happens incrementally, just how fast it
yeah.
changes the world. I remember being like a kid and seeing this Palm Pilot with internet access. It was like a black and white screen. And I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, that is the coolest thing. It's a Palm Pilot with internet access. I could go on the internet everywhere. And,
Yeah.
it was like probably a piece of crap. Like the web browser on that thing was like a joke. And,
Yeah.
now everyone's just got these $1,000 computers. They're like supercomputers compared to what we had before, just connected to the internet all the time. The rate of progress is just insane. And we don't really realize how it's happening year by year. But then you look back 10 years later and you go, holy cow, like the whole world has changed.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, this is crazy. I want to wrap up by talking briefly about Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on Tesla getting into Bitcoin? Mistake? Not a big deal. Should they just go all BTC or just have a little bit and call it a day?
Yeah, this is really interesting. And I think so many people just misunderstand Bitcoin and don't understand what it is. For me as like a computer programmer, it's just like someone just came up with this really beautiful, simple, radical idea that I think is going to take people really a lot of time to process. And, we have this monetary system, the system that we use to control the world. It's money. It's just a piece of paper printed by the United States government and other governments, but it's able to be used to tell us what to do. So, for example, you make a YouTube video and there's advertisers there, money's flowing around from the advertisers to YouTube to you, anyone who does a business. Money is basically telling them what to do. It's telling them what people want, right? And really getting people to do the right things. Money is this technology that lets us all coordinate and come up with these crazy things, come up with Teslas and iPhones and make it all work out and incentivize people to do the right thing. But, the only way that we have it right now or in the past is just like this government money. And why does the money have value? It has value because the government says it does, and because we all
Good point.
believe it. Yeah, and because we all believe it. Like I can give you $10, and that $10 is worth something to me and you because I know I can take that $10. I can go to 7-Eleven and I can buy something. But there's a lot of like limitations to this system. The government can go print a ton of money, and it's essentially like stealing money out of your pocket. There's a lot of different limitations. The government can stop money. They really control the whole banking system. Like if you break the law, let's say, you're selling a bunch of crack or something, the government can just seize your bank account, right? They can say, well, you made that money illegally, we're going to take it. So there's a bunch of limitations to the money system. Another is like bank transfers. You've probably seen like bank transfers taking a couple days. So Bitcoin is like this really radical idea. And I encourage anyone who understands like computers and stuff, go read the Bitcoin white paper if you haven't. It's like this really radical, just 11-page paper where this guy said, hey, here's a whole different system of money. We're essentially just going to have this big distributed database that everyone controls. So nobody's in control, no government, no person. It's just we're all sharing this database of transactions that everyone has done. And what's interesting is it really gets its value from energy, right? So
Yeah.
why can I not make a Bitcoin? You need to have a bunch of computers and you need to use a bunch of electricity and use a bunch of computers to make this Bitcoin. So that's really the limiting factor. So it's not really based on trust in the government. It's based on this economic constraint of energy. Like, you don't have all the energy in the world, so you can't, like, make all the Bitcoin in the world. And I think that's really interesting for Tesla. If the future of money is energy, right? It's money that is limited in supply because we have limited energy. What does that mean for Tesla, a company that is a renewable energy company and is selling you these solar panels and these batteries in a world where um, money is energy and energy is money?
Yeah.
Sustainable energy and renewable energy is just way bigger than like we can imagine, right? So we think about, powering our homes and powering our cars and all this stuff, but there's all kinds of uses we can't even imagine where if energy doesn't pollute, if it's clean, we're going to start using energy for all these kinds of things. Like, energy essentially becomes our system of money, right? So it's really kind of like mind blowing when you think about it. And like Tesla, and I think Elon kind of realized this. He's like, like, if energy is the constraint for money, like, I'm not making more Bitcoin because maybe I want it, this energy can be used to power my house, or it can be used to power my car, or it can be used to mine cryptocurrency. So there's kind of like this inherent trade-off that gives it value, because that energy could be used for this, or it could be used for that. And, in a world of renewable energy, like, energy will be used for all kinds of things we can't imagine. So I think Tesla's really like thinking way far into the future, really popularizing this and making people think about it, and making people say that, hey, this is legitimate. Like, we are willing to hold $1.5 billion worth of this stuff because we think this actually has value. And I think in the future, people will realize that a spot on this distributed ledger does have value.
Golly, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, that's there's a comment here that it even mentions, hey, that's kind of like what people said about oil 100 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
oil will be the future, and it really has been, and it still is today. And so now it's just the next frontier of sustainability. And this is incredible. I want to open it up to any final thoughts that you have, and then I also want you to shout out your channel and how to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So my final thoughts on this are like, a lot of people are really upset today because Elon said, hey, we're going to have this button for FSD, and it could come as soon as this weekend. And a lot of people were really hoping it was going to come this weekend. And he now said, it's going to look, we're not doing it this weekend. It's going to be April. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, is it even going to come in April? I'm just super jaded. I'm super disillusioned. What the fuck, And I would just say to these people, like, this FSD software, it's not fake. It's real, okay? I've been using it for 5 months now, and you will be amazed at what it does. It will run on your Tesla, your 2017 Tesla, anything after October 2016. It'll run on your Tesla, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be incredible, and you're really going to enjoy using it. You're going to, wow your friends. It will be worth the wait. And this is going to change everything about the way we live our lives. The same way smartphones changed everything about the way we live our lives, this is going to change everything. It's going to be so great. It's going to give us economic opportunity. It's going to save millions of lives every year. This is just so huge. And, be patient. It's coming. It's going to be great. And it's really going to be transformative. It's not going to happen overnight. This is going to be years of work. There's going to be highs and lows, but just huge shout out to the Autopilot team, who everyone in the world is against them. Everyone in the world is saying, fuck these guys. They're idiots. They don't know what they're doing. This is dangerous. They're going to kill people. No, like, these guys are really doing something really groundbreaking. And I just give them huge props. And when people try this, they will see it for themselves. So yeah, Whole Mars on YouTube, if you want to check out some of these FSD videos, wholemars.net. There's this short seller who's suing me and Elon Musk named Aaron Greenspan. Go read my story about that on wholemars.net. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Why? I gotta just briefly. Well, why? Why are they suing you?
Well, this guy had this conspiracy theory that Elon Musk was secretly paying me, and I'm not really a Tesla customer, and I'm actually being paid by Elon Musk. He's like this crazy, just delusional guy. He actually thinks he invented Facebook. And he got really upset that I said that he didn't invent Facebook. And he just, it's a whole other story. Like, I can't explain it to you now. You got to go check out the story, wholemars.net. Go read it yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, that's going to be something interesting to read. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Stand by for just a moment. For everyone else, thank you so very much for watching. If you found this helpful, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Go check out Whole Mars catalog on YouTube and Twitter and wholemars.net. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin. It was a lot of fun.